Hello. Welcome to the podcast, Human Rights in America, a Revolutionary Mindset. I am your host, Sue Young. Hello, and welcome to episode 8. It's all about the Ninth Amendment. Kinda. So before I dive into the Ninth Amendment, I have to give an update on a past episode where I talked about the Convention on the Rights of a Child, CRC, specifically on child marriages. According to an Associated Press article this past week, Sierra Leone, a small country in West Africa, banned child marriages. Sierra Leone is home to 800,000 child brides, with half of them being married before the age of 15. This number represents a third of all the girls in the country, according to the UN Children's Agency. The law is being celebrated. It criminalizes marrying any girl who is under 18 years old. Offenders face up to 15 years in prison or a fine of both. Witnesses to such marriages, like the parents, the people officiating the wedding, and even guests, will also face jail or a fine. On social media platform X, President Julius Maada Bio said, "I always believed that the future of Sierra Leone is female. This and future generations of girls must thrive in Sierra Leone, in which they're protected, equal, and empowered." The New York Times also reported on this same news. They reported that 4% of the boys are wedded by 18. And under the new law, those married as children, both boys and girls, can seek financial compensation and also have a path out of their marriages. They can petition for an annulment. The Times also reported that at least 12 million girls around the globe under the age of 18 marry. South Asia has the largest number of child brides, about 290 million people, followed by sub-Saharan Africa with 20% of that number. So why do we talk about child marriages? What problems can come from marrying so young? Child marriages can often lead to girls leaving school. Pregnancies at a young age can cause long-term injuries and trauma. Sierra Leone is one of the deadliest places to give birth, which is even more dangerous for teenagers. Khadijatu Bari stated they're forced to be adults before they are adults. A student and a program coordinator with Strong Girls Evolution, which is a networking organization for Sierra Leonean women. Ms. Bari said that her family had begun pressuring her to get married at the age of 10, and that she was disowned by her father when she was 15 for refusing. Under the new legislation, which went into effect last Tuesday, people who marry children can be imprisoned for 15 years and fined over $5,000. This is a stiff penalty when the country where the gross domestic product per capita is about $433 in 2023, according to the World Bank data. The law does not just apply to marriage. It also prohibits, which I didn't even know this existed, it also prohibits cohabitation, in which adults live with and have sexual relationship with children. Parents are no longer allowed to consent to a child's marriage. The ban aligns with the broad initiative in Sierra Leone to promote the rights of girls by keeping them in school and protecting them from genital cutting. Lawmakers realize that marriages like this will go underground. So, for the law to have any real impact, researchers and experts said Sierra Leone's officials will have to build relationships with communities, especially in rural areas where child marriage is more common. That would mean addressing poverty, which goes back to one of my prior episodes about poverty, which can lead to families to marry their daughters off as children. It also means expanding efforts to educate communities about sexual and reproductive health. Many women and girls would still have to go against their neighbors, their husbands, and their families to refuse a marriage, petition to end one, or seek compensation. So I was just curious that there was no mention of any U.S. information. I took an opportunity to recheck my information. I first checked Wikipedia, and it appears that as of June 2024, there are 13 states, not just Delaware, the one that I reported on, but there are 13 states that have outlawed child marriages, removing all exceptions. Those states are Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Rhode Island, New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut, Michigan, New Hampshire, and American Samoa and Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and all of the territories have ended child marriage. It was just odd to me that neither article related information back to the U.S., which I think would have been helpful for American readers. True, our numbers aren't as bad as some of the African countries, but between 2000 and 2018, we had 300,000 child marriages. If we're going to be the leader in human rights, we have to recognize our own weaknesses. Some states don't even have a lower age limit for marriage. We have a long way to go. This update is a courtesy of an avid listener, my cousin Denise. I think it's so cool that people are listening, learning, and now look for evidence of human rights in the news. This is why I do this podcast. So if you listen and want to provide an update, please contact me at hrinamerica@gmail.com. My website is still under construction, but I will look forward to reading your email. Let's spend the remainder of this episode with the Ninth Amendment. So why talk about the Ninth Amendment? The reason is rights are just the ideals and are not effective or given recognition until they are embedded in our laws through legislation by Congress or through law via the courts. The Ninth Amendment says that the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Let's pause for a minute and define enumerated. It means to mention a number of things one by one, listed, or something that is identified. There's a little history. When the U.S. Constitution was put to the states for ratification after being signed on September 17, 1787, the Anti-Federalists, which are the people who were opposed to the Constitution, argued that a Bill of Rights should be added. One of the arguments that the Federalists, those are people for the Constitution, gave against the addition of a Bill of Rights during the debates was that listing of rights could problematically enlarge the powers specified in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. The First through Eighth Amendment address the means by which the federal government exercises its enumerated powers, while the Ninth Amendment addresses a great residuum of rights that have not been thrown into the hands of the government, as Madison put it. Alternatively, according to the Reagan Library, one of the dilemmas of the Ninth Amendment is that just because the rights aren't listed, it doesn't really give any. The definition is faulty by the Reagan Library, because I believe that our founder said exactly what they mean. Rights not listed are reserved to the people and not the government. Do you think the government would have difficulty finding rights if the Ninth Amendment stated this, that all rights not listed in the Constitution are reserved for the government? I think the government would have a field day with this amendment. It's a constitutional safety net intended to make clear that individuals have other fundamental rights in addition to those listed in the First through Eighth Amendments. Some of the framers had raised concerns that because it wasn't possible to list every fundamental right, it in fact would be dangerous to list just some of them for fear of suggesting that the list was complete. The Ninth Amendment lends strong support to the view that liberty, protected by the Fifth and the 14th Amendment from infringement by the federal government or the state, is not restricted to rights specifically mentioned in the first 8 amendments. You can see this in the case CF United Public Workers versus Mitchell, 330 U.S. 75, 94 through 95. That's a little legalese stuff. I believe that the Ninth Amendment is the open door for legislating, embedding, and protecting human rights into our U.S. laws. Is this simple, one sentence, too much to believe? Somehow, I believe that we will argue over and over again of the meaning of the Second Amendment in order to justify the plethora of gun rights and gun ownership in this country, rather than take the plain-faced meaning of the Ninth Amendment. The fact is, even the Supreme Court has largely ignored this amendment in all of its extensive jurisprudence. In more than 2 centuries of precedent, the court has yet to use the Ninth Amendment as a sole basis for a ruling. In most instances, it has merely been paired with other amendments, alluded to for a secondary support for a decision, called in a concurrence rather than majority opinion. The last, perhaps notable case is the case of Griswold versus Connecticut. In that case, one justice argued this. He said, I don't think that you can use the Ninth Amendment unless you know something of what it means. In the year 2000, Harvard historian Bernard Bailyn gave a speech at the White House on the Ninth Amendment. He said that the Ninth Amendment refers to a universe of rights possessed by the people, latent rights, still to be evoked and enacted into law, a reservoir of other unenumerated rights that the people retain, which in time may be enacted into law. Similarly, journalist Brian Doherty argued that the Ninth Amendment specifically roots the Constitution in a natural rights tradition that says we are born with more rights than any constitution could ever list or specify. I agree with this. Well, I'm going to let this simmer for a minute and leave you with the previous quote by Alice Walker. The easiest way that people give up their rights is when they don't know they have them. Until next time, catch up on the episodes. Healthcare, the actual words of this Declaration of 1948. Why? Why would I want you to re-listen to it or print it out and go to the website? Why do I want you to see it with your own eyes? Because people and organizations will change the words little by little until you have something completely different, just like an animal farm. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. Until next time, be revolutionary, be human.